Thank you,
sir.
In your experience as obviously a training firefighter, tell me the word again that you used.
Field training officer or preceptor.
Thank you. As a field training officer, have you seen in your experience the product or the injuries that can be produced from fistfights?
Yes.
Okay. Injuries to the face.
Yes.
Injuries to the mouth.
Yes.
Injuries to the nose.
Yes.
To the ears.
Yep.
To the eyes. Defensive wounds on the hands.
Yes.
Did you note we've already talked about, I don't want to go over all this again. You've already noted what the injuries to the face were that you saw Mr. O'Keefe having suffered.
Yes.
Were those consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation?
I couldn't say.
Were they consistent or inconsistent with being in a fight?
I couldn't say.
Was that egg over his right eye consistent or inconsistent with him having been punched or hit?
I couldn't say.
I thought you said that one of the common causes of an egg like that, a hematoma, as you put it, over someone's eye, is being hit or punched.
There's quite a few reasons that somebody could get an egg, such as that over their head there. I mean, you can get hit with a golf ball, for instance.
I'm not asking you to the exclusion of everything else.
Yeah.
I'm asking you, is it consistent?
It's consistent. It could be.
Okay. And the other injuries as well?
Correct.
Okay. Did you see bruising to the back of one or both of his hands?
His hands were, as stated, they were very cold and very white. They were not well perfused. And when you don't have adequate perfusion, swelling and smaller injuries don't typically present themselves, if you will.
So you may not have seen it?
Correct.
The bruising may have been there.
It might have been there. It just wasn't observable just due to the condition of his hands.
Just made overlooked?
Yes.
Okay. You indicated that you were not present when your colleague, Katie McLaughlin, was questioning anybody at the scene, correct?
Correct.
She's tasked with that responsibility, but you did not engage with her.
Correct.
I mean, when I say engage with her, you weren't standing there with her.
No, I was in the back of the ambulance.
Okay. You claim to have heard the statement, I hit him,
yes,
several times from the woman with blood on her face.
Correct.
You indicated that she was erratic.
Correct.
Hysterical.
Correct.
You said, for lack of a better term, running around in circles.
Yes.
She seemed despondent or distraught.
Very distraught.
Very upset.
Yes.
Was she saying anything else that you recall?
To me, I heard I hit him, and then I went back, obviously continuing on patient care, focusing on patient care.
Did you hear her say, could I have hit him?
I heard I hit him.
That's what you believe at this point?
That's what I heard.
Okay. Where exactly were you?
I was crouched at the head of Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay. You were asked that exact question at the grand jury, correct? To describe where you were and who was doing what?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. You were asked a question when you spoke to her and she said, I hit him. Were you with the other representative, sir, there at the time? Were there other people around you? Do you remember being asked that question by a grand juror?
I don't recall.
Do you remember answering, no, there were other people around me. I had paramedics Flamati with me. I believe firefighter Kelly was there as well.
Correct. So the three of us were all providing patient care around Mr. O'Keefe.
And you indicated that we were all there together. You were kneeling and you were doing the airway while you called it Tony.
Yes, that's Anthony Tony. Yes.
All right. He was doing the CPR, correct?
Correct.
And it's absolutely clear in your mind that when that statement was made, you were knelt down over Mr. O'Keefe. Flamati was doing CPR. Kelly was with you guys. And you posed the question to her, do you know him? Correct?
Correct.
Correct. So I want to make sure I understand this. You said, as you're knelt down, do you know him? Directly to the female. And she answered your question with, I hit him.
Yes.
But that's not what you told Trooper Proctor in a February 8th interview.
Okay. I don't recall what I told Trooper Proctor.
Let's start at the beginning. Do you remember having a conversation with Trooper Proctor on February 8th?
I do.
That was obviously much closer in time than your grand jury testimony, correct?
Correct.
And years closer in time than your testimony now.
Correct.
Do you recall on February 8th telling Trooper Proctor that while you were rendering aid, you heard Karen say, I hit him, to another female on the scene?
To another female. As I stated, I heard several times I hit him. In terms of who that was directed towards, I mean, again, focused on patient care.
Understood. My question was a little bit different. Do you recall telling Trooper Proctor specifically that while you were rendering aid, you heard Karen say, I hit him, to another female on the scene, and the other female told Karen to be quiet?
I do recall that.
Okay. That's not what you testified to today, though.
Okay.
Matter of fact, that story has changed to you posed a question, and she answered your question. Correct?
Correct.
So which is it?
So when ventilating a patient, typically, that is also used to gather information from bystanders, because as I'm ventilating, I can real quick look around. Do you know this individual? Do you know anything about this individual? That's fairly typical for any scenario in this. It's a very quick information gathering strategy.
But you'll agree that your testimony today has changed from what it was in your statement to Trooper Proctor on February 8th.
I don't know if it would so much say change, sir. To be honest, I don't fully recall that meeting with Mr. Proctor. I remember meeting with him. However, I don't fully remember what was discussed.
So it's fair to say that your memory is a little bit faulty as it pertains to that time frame?
Absolutely.
Okay. When you went to the hospital with the patient, did you ever inform any of the doctors or nurses or medical professionals at the hospital that you had heard a female claim to have hit John O'Keefe, and that's the reason for his injuries?
I did not give the report to the hospital.
So the answer to that is no.
No.
You did not. As a first responder and a medical professional yourself, obviously you know that the cause and manner of the victim's injuries are incredibly important as it pertains to assessing how to treat that patient.
Correct.
Once you got back to the station and to take a breath, did you write any report?
I did not. No, I did not write the patient care report.
So you didn't write a report, just to finish my question, you didn't write a report that said, by the way, while I was out at the scene, I heard a female say, I hit him, and that's the cause and manner of the injuries.
Not to my knowledge.
Well, you would know if you wrote a report that said that.
Correct.
And you did not.
I did not write the patient care report.
Okay. At any time that day or any day subsequent thereto, did you contact the Canton Police Department, which were the first responders?
I did not.
So let me finish my question. And say, by the way, just so you know, I heard this woman say, I hit him out of the scene.
I did not.
Did you ever, on that day or any day subsequent thereto, contact the Massachusetts State Police and say, I heard this person say I hit him?
I did not.
So the first time you ever repeated that statement was on February 8th with Trooper Proctor?
Correct.
And by the time we've come full circle to today, that statement has now pivoted.
In terms,
You didn't overhear the person say it to a female. Now, she's talking directly to you now.
she spoke directly to me, yes.
Have you, just one last point, you've obviously noted that this case has gotten an enormous amount of notoriety, correct?
Correct.
How many times would you say that you've discussed this case and this incident with your fellow firefighters?
It's brought up around the station semi-frequently. However, being involved in it, we try to stay clear of it just because we are involved in it.
So the answer is, there have been many discussions.
Yes.
Probably daily.
Frequently.
Have any of those discussions helped you with what you earlier described as a little bit of a faulty memory around that time frame?
Objection, Your Honor.
You can have that. Have they?
Repeat the question for me, sir?
Sure. Have any of those discussions helped you with what you earlier described as a little bit of a faulty memory?
The memories that I have and the ones that I'm bringing up, I don't believe that they've changed. You know, I played them over in my head to the best of my ability, and I don't believe my story is swayed. If they've been enunciated incorrectly on my part, it wasn't intentional.
Understood. And nobody's casting aspersions. Memory's a funny thing. So your memory is as good about that as it is about that winter coat.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Mr. Lally?
Mr. Nuttall, when it comes to you being asked about consistency of causality as far as different injuries that you observed on Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Rephrase that for me.
Poorly phrased, Michael. So you have been asked on cross-examination about some things that the injuries you observed on Mr. O'Keefe could be consistent with as far as having been the cause of those injuries, correct?
Correct.
And how many sort of myriad of other causality, or how many myriad of other sort of things could have also been a cause of the injuries that you observed?
As stated, a lot. It's not typically just physical altercations. It could be, again, a golf ball could hit you in the head. That could cause similar injuries.
And just for clarity purposes, when you were asked about a particular time frame, were you talking about the time frame of January 29th, or were you talking about the time frame of February 8th when you met with Trooper Proctor?
Sorry, sir, rephrase that for me.
Let me withdraw that and move on to something else. So just, again, for clarity purposes, when you were asked about some statements that were attributed to you to Trooper Proctor during the interview, correct?
Correct.
And so with regard to what you recall differently, is it the statement that the female with blood on her face made to you, or the statement of the other female telling that person to be quiet?
So as stated, real quick, down and dirty, I asked, do you know this person? To which I hit him. And then in the background, I remember hearing over and over, I hit him. That was kind of pushed towards the back, and patient care took priority, if that answers your question.
Do you recall specifically at this time the other statements that you were asked about as far as whether or not the other female told that female to be quiet?
I do remember that, correct.
And the other statement as far as the female with blood on her face, and again, that was the differentiating character between the two females that you observed there, correct?
Correct.
And your memory of that statement is, I hit him, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
All right, Mr. Nuttall, you are all set, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Do you have another witness, Mr. Lally, to start?
Yes, sir. Your Honor, the Commonwealth will call Mr. Anthony Flamati to the stand.
Raise your right hand. You swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case now and hearing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lilly.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
How are you?
Could you please state your name and spell your last name, please?
Name is Anthony Flamati. Last name spelled Flematti.
And how are you employed, sir?
I'm a acting lieutenant at this time for the Canton Fire Department.
And how long in total have you worked for the Canton Fire Department?
Got hired in 2015, July 2015, so coming up on 10 years.
And prior to working with the Canton Fire Department, what, if any, other work did you have within sort of the same field?
So in the same field, I worked for the Athol Fire Department for a few years, hired in 2012, March 2012, until July of 2015. So just transferred departments.
And even prior to working with the Athol Fire Department, did you work as an EMT anywhere?
Yep. So I worked as an EMT for American Medical Response out of Springfield and Holyoke. Worked for Fallon Ambulance. Started basic level of EMT around 2008, and then just different private ambulance companies around the state.
And just starting with the EMT side of it for the first, what, if any, training did you receive or education did you receive prior to getting your certification as an EMT?
There's different levels of certifications for EMTs. The EMT basic starts out with about 6 months, a couple nights a week for about, like I said, about 6 months. Take a certification, practical, and written examination for that to get your basic level, and then you move on to the paramedic level of schooling as well.
Can you describe for the jury a little bit about sort of what that paramedic level of schooling is?
So the paramedic schooling starts, it's about 12 to 14 months, depends on the program, which school you go to. Night school 2 to 4 times a week for about 14 months, and then you start going into a clinical phase where you go into the different operating rooms, emergency rooms, OB/GYN, cardiac CCU, ICU. You do about 300 hours of education in that. Once you've completed a bunch of skill checkoffs under the supervision of an RN or doctor, depending on the room, you would then clear that section of your schooling and then move on to a ride time phase, which is about 200 to 300 hours, depending on skills, what you need. That would be either in a fire department or a private EMS under the preceptorship of a senior paramedic that would kind of walk you through how to do the job and shadow you and supervise that you're doing things appropriately. You do that for about 200 or 300 hours. You write up different documentation, basically learning how to do it out of the clinical set and then more in the field set. After that, you would, whatever job you have at that point, you would do an additional practical assessment, again, about 6 or 7 different stages of evaluation for physical skills. Then you would do a written test, again, with the state. At that time, it was the state, Massachusetts, to certify you as a paramedic. Then after that, they have another 2 to 6 month preceptorship within the department to acclimate you to the physical location that you're working at.
And so there's a written portion and practical portion,
Yes.
both the EMT as well as the paramedic training?
Yes, that's right.
And you successfully completed that and received certifications in regard to both?
Yes.
And those certifications, are they something that is just sort of a one-time blessing, or is that something that has a continuing educational component and a recertification?
That's correct. So every 2 years, we have to do a 48-hour refresher. So it's continuing education classes as far as national core curriculum classes that the national standard holds us to. So it covers different topics that they mandate that we cover every 2 years.
And your certification is up to date at this point, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned that you're currently a lieutenant within the Canton Fire Department, is that correct?
Yes.
And how long have you been, have you had the rank of lieutenant?
I'm a temporary acting lieutenant, so I've been that since, I believe it was February, up till this time.
And within the town of Canton, how many fire station or firehouses do you have within Canton?
So we have 2 different stations, headquarters and Station 2, that we operate over.
And do you work specifically in one, or does it sort of rotate between the two?
Depends on the rank. So as a firefighter, we rotate through the different positions, or different stations. As the lieutenant, I'm the lieutenant right now at Station 1, so headquarters.
And where is Station 1 located?
99 Revere Street.
And with respect to each of the 2 station houses, how many sort of different vehicles and apparatus are located in each?
So we have, depends on what's obviously in service for mechanical issues and stuff, but we have a primary engine, a backup engine. We try to have at each station. We have 1 tanker truck, 2 ladder trucks. We have 2 primary ambulances and then a backup ambulance as well. So we try to have at least 1 engine, 1 ambulance, 1 ladder at each station, and then we'll have the backup pieces for that. And I believe our tanker truck right now, or our water truck, is out of Station 2.
And Station 2, where is that located?
7 Sassamon Street.
Now, as far as the sort of shift, how many people are assigned to, when you're assigned to, let me ask you this first. When you have a shift, what hours is that shift sort of concern?
So for shifting or shift work, it's 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. So we're 24-hour shifts. We'd have a 24 period off from work, another 24, and then we're off for 5 days.
And when you're assigned to a certain shift for that 24-hour period, are you assigned to sort of a specific duty or a truck, or how does that work?
We're usually just assigned to a specific position for either the 10 hour or the 14, depending on rotations, overtime, that kind of stuff. But we're usually assigned to an individual piece or individual position for that shift, at least, whether it's a day shift or the whole 24.
And so starting with just the ambulance, if you're assigned to the ambulance, how many people and what are the different roles in the ambulance?
So the ambulance, we have 2 people assigned to the ambulance. We rotate either through seniority or through care level, whether paramedic, EMT. If you're both paramedics, then we go by seniority and swap back and forth for call volume and teching, who's in charge of the call. And then we would also cross-man with the ladder as well. So depending on the call that comes in for service, we would either, on a fire call, we could take the ladder, medical call, we could take the ambulance.
And with respect to the engine, how is that sort of divvied up, or what are the different roles on an engine?
So with the engine, if we have a full staff of 13 members, we would have 4 people on the engine. If there's a couple people off vacation, that type of thing, we could do, it's the driver, the step, and then the lieutenant in charge of the engine.
Now, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, into the evening of January 28th into the morning of January 29th, were you working on that occasion?
Yes.
Okay, you were working 8 a.m. on the 28th until 8 a.m. on the 29th, is that correct?
That's correct.
And which firehouse were you working out of on that occasion?
I believe it was Station 1 at the time.
And what was your assignment in relation to that shift, whether it was ambulance, truck, or engine, whatever?
That would have been Ambulance 1 at that time.
And who, if anyone else, was assigned to ambulance 1 along with you with that?
At the time, I was working with Matthew Leahy. Not Leahy, sorry, Matthew Kelly. We have a lot of similar names.
And what, if any, disparity was there between sort of the experience that you had versus the experience that Mr. Kelly had at that time?
So Mr. Kelly had just started with the department at the BLS level at the EMTB, probably 2 or 3 months prior. I had just finished up his preceptorship, getting him onboarded as a new hire EMT, so very minimal experience at that time.
So fair to say any sort of medical calls, you would have been sort of what they call the lead paramedic, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, with reference to that particular time frame, 28th, 29th, what, if anything, were you aware of as far as sort of weather, forecast, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so leading into that shift, I knew there was a storm coming, and I'd always lived a good distance away from work, so I would try and tie overtime shifts in so I wouldn't have to commute more than once back and forth, but with the storm coming, wanted to not have to drive into the weather, so I picked up overtime the night before that shift.
And about what time did you arrive the night before?
The night before I arrived at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. is the start of the shift.
And so you were essentially on shift for a relatively significant period of time leading into the morning of the 29th, correct?
That's correct.
And you mentioned that there was a storm that was forecasted. What, if anything else, do you recall about sort of what type of storm or what was predicted?
Predicted it was going to be a pretty significant storm, heavy winds, heavy snow. Not something I wanted to drive in the morning, so if the opportunity arose, I took the overtime for that night.
What did it turn out to be as far as?
Exactly as predicted. We hadn't gotten much snow up until about midnight or so, and then snow developed since pretty much then on.
And in a moment, I'm going to ask you about a call around 6 a.m., but just if I could take you back a little bit before that, over sort of the overnight shift, did you have any dispatches or calls that you responded to, say, after midnight but prior to 6 a.m.?
I don't believe so. I don't recall how many calls were prior to that. That one was kind of the key of the night.
So you mentioned sort of, what, if any, memory do you have as far as like sort of when it started to snow?
It would have been after 10 p.m. for sure, but I'm not sure exactly.
Now, turning your attention to a little bit after 6 a.m., you get a dispatch for a medical call, correct?
Correct.
And just prior to that, what about time did you sort of get up, rise, and sort of start doing things around the station that day?
So shift change usually happens around 8 a.m. in the morning. It takes a while to get everything ready for normal business hours. We try and get the station prepped for public that come into the building or just people passing, going around. We try to prepare the sidewalks, the apron. So we get up around 5:30, if depending on call volume throughout the night. Sometimes we're up throughout the whole night. But we got up that morning around 5 to shovel, snow blow, salt the public walkways, and that type of thing.
And specifically when it comes to the apron, that's sort of the area in front of the garage doors, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so why is it so important to sort of clear off the apron as far as snow is concerned?
So as far as in front of the apparatus doors, it's a very limited height clearance between the top of the fire apparatus and the actual garage bay doors. So a few inches of snow would be enough to cause us to bump into the ceiling of the apparatus garage doors. So we have to keep that relatively almost bare to be able to pull the apparatus out without causing any damage.
And about what time was it that you and the other firefighters at your station started to sort of clear off, whether it be parking lot, the apron, or anything else as far as snow?
I'd say about 5:15, 5:30.
And at the time that you get this call, shortly after 6 a.m., about how much snow was on the ground at that point in the morning?
I'd say probably 4 to 6 inches.
And this dispatch that comes in shortly after 6 a.m., what was the dispatch in regard to it, and where were you dispatched to?
So we didn't have much information going out the door, just that there was a man on the side of the road. And we knew, due to the weather, that could be a significant call. So
Before I leave and depart on that just for 1 second, when it comes to when you're outside sort of shoveling off the apron and clearing some of the parking lot, in addition to the snow, what, if anything else, did you note as far as sort of the weather conditions, visibility, things like that?
So visibility was extremely poor. High winds, probably 20, 30 mile an hour winds. Temperature probably in the 20s with still actively snowing at that time.
In the winds, to the best of your recollection, was this something that was just sort of a gust, or was it sort of persistent?
Sustained winds and then probably gusts as well.
And so you received this dispatch, and you, I'm presuming, get in the ambulance and go, correct?
Correct.
And if anyone is in the ambulance with you when you respond?
So responding in, I had myself, Matthew Kelly, and firefighter Nuttall had come in early as well to try and beat storm and get in on time, as he was scheduled to come in at 8 a.m. that morning anyways. But with the heavy snow, wanted to make sure he could get in and be able to relieve the people coming off.
And within the ambulance, where was everybody sort of situated on route to the call?
I believe Matthew Kelly was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and Nuttall was in the back of the truck.
And as far as during the course of your going from Station 1 to the scene on Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you note as far as sort of the road conditions, visibility as you were driving?
So that neighborhood is actually relatively close to the station, so you normally get there in a couple minutes, but it was slow driving over there. So I remember going pretty slow to get over to the scene.
And as far as this particular time of day, what was sort of the lighting like at that point? Had the sun come up or anything like that?
The sun had not come up yet. It was still dark, heavy winds, heavy snow, so visibility was almost zero.
And as far as what if any other sort of apparatuses from your station were dispatched to this call as well at the same time?
So the other call would have been, or the other vehicle would have been engine 3, and just engine 3. Car 5 will sometimes go. That's the shift commander for the department, depending on the nature of the call, how it comes in, and the ambulance. So it would have been the 3 apparatus.
And do you recall who, if anyone, was in either car 5 or the engine?
So car 5 would have been, at the time, Captain Wendell Robery. And the engine, it would have been Frank Walsh, Katie McLaughlin, and the lieutenant for the engine was Greg Woodbury.
And you mentioned it took a little bit longer than without the weather to get to Fairview Road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If you have any idea approximately how much time elapsed between the time that you received the call and the time that you arrived on scene.
I'd have to refer to the EMS report. That is going to be more accurate, but I believe it's 5 or 6 minutes.
And to that point, with any call, there's an EMS report that's prepared by, who is it prepared by?
So it's usually the person who texts the call or is in charge of the call. This was an ALS level call, so it would have been myself.
So you wrote as far as the report in relation to EMS arrival, and within that is contained sort of different times that things happen along the way, correct?
Correct.
And the times that are noted within that report, is that something that's noted as it's happening, or is that something that you go back and figure out at a later time?
So as we're going through the call and radio messages are sent, that's all documented on a third party that documents timestamps, things like that. As far as on scene, transport, clear from the hospital, that type of thing. It's all third party documented.
May I approach the witness, John?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 160. Specifically turning to the 7th page and asking you to direct your attention to the far right column. You see that portion of the report, sir?
Yes.
Okay. First and foremost, what I played before you had Exhibit 160, that's your report, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And on that right column of the 7th page, Andrew, what, if anything, do you see with regard to the times?
So we have our dispatch time 6:06, en route time 6:07, on scene 6:14, at patient 6:15, and we have transported from that scene at 6:27 and arrived at destination at the hospital 6:45.
And that destination hospital would have been Good Samaritan Medical Center, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, if you could, going back to sort of your dispatch from Station House to Fairview Road, can you describe sort of the path as far as what direction, what route you took to go from one to the other?
Yep. So from Revere Street, we would have come out, taken a right onto Revere Street, gone to the end of that road, taken a left on Sherman, driven all the way up to Chapman Street, taken a right on Chapman Street, gone up to Fairview Street, and then taken a left on that. And that would have brought us down to the address.
And as you're coming down Fairview, are you familiar with that area?
Yes.
Okay. And so as you're coming down Fairview, is there any kind of grade or elevation to the roadway as you're coming down?
So that is a downhill towards about halfway down the road, so a pretty good grade that's coming downwards.
And the address that you responded to at 34 Fairview Road, when you're coming from the direction that you were coming off of Chapman, is that a residence that's on your left or right or something else?
That would have been on the left.
And when you arrive on scene, what, if any, other sort of vehicles or apparatuses do you observe beyond sort of what you've already described as the...
So we had the fire apparatus. There's another vehicle, bystander vehicle, that was on scene as well. I don't recall if police were on scene at that time, but...
And when you first sort of pull up to the scene, what, if anything, is it that you observe even prior to getting out of the truck or the ambulance?
So as we're pulling up to the scene, we see 2 female parties, non-uniformed personnel, that were going back and forth between the body and the side of the street and back and forth. Appeared to be a female party that was pushing on his chest and then going back and forth between the other female party and the patient.
And again, so when you first sort of pull up, you're able to see the body on the ground. Is that correct?
It was, yeah, you could see a body, but it was very hard to see that distance away.
And do you recall any sort of like overhead or ambient lighting, street lighting, or anything like that illuminating in that area?
I don't recall.
Now, this individual, as far as the person on the ground, at some point you were able to subsequently identify who that was. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Who did you identify him?
So identification won't normally happen right at that bedside. That's not really relevant to initial treatment. We found out who it was when we got into the ambulance and we were able to do a more thorough search once intervention had started.
So when you first arrive on scene, fair to say you're primarily or only sort of concerned with patient care, correct?
Yeah, correct.
With one sort of tunnel vision to the patient, correct? So you arrive on scene and you get out of the ambulance, and where is it that you go?
So we then go grab all the equipment that we're going to need to work on the patient, and then we bring that equipment over to the patient's side to be able to start treatment.
All right. Mr. Flamati, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you, Mr. Lally. Jurors, that's it for today. We are not in session tomorrow. I remind you, please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please disregard it. Let us know. And we'll see you on Thursday morning, and Thursday will be a hot day. Thank you very much.
All rise for the court, please.